If you're really fighting with anyone you love and they're intentionally going for like low blows of something that, especially if you've set the boundary saying that triggers me, or, you know, like, I really wish you would find a different way to say that, things like that, and they're still going for that. It's like, that's not respect.
Seanydoo. Hello, and welcome to Situaseans podcast. I'm your host, Sean Michael Williams, aka Seanydoo. You can call me Sean, Seanydoo. Doesn't that matter to me? I'm just glad that y'all are here. I have a special guest with me today, a really good friend here. Who is this guest?
Hello. My name's Alexis Lackey. It's nice to see you, Sean.
Yes, nice to see you too. Thank you so much for coming on to the show.
Of course.
Yeah, and you know, I'm so excited because, you know, we talked offline about you sharing your story and everything, and like my audience, they love, you know, whenever, you know, I have guests on that talk about, the triumphs and everything that they've gone through in their personal experiences, and blessing our audience with such knowledge and insight to help them with their journey. So I'm excited to have you here.
Yeah, I'm really excited about the conversation.
Yes. And so you have quite the bio, so I definitely have to share with our listeners who you are. So you are 28 years old, living in the suburbs of Chicago, a licensed social worker, master's degree in social work, and you work in special education at a therapeutic school with ages kindergarten, K through 2022. Okay. Yeah. All right. Clinician of the year for the 2023-2024 school year. All right. At your job. And then you spent a year volunteering in upstate New York with adolescent boys in the juvenile justice system. Wow. And you specialize in working with individuals with lack of boundaries, intense emotional dysregulation, oppositional defiance, borderline personality disorder, autism, ADHD, self-injurious behavior, unstable and unhealthy relationships, and so much more. Wow. Goodness. And personal experience and professional experience with toxic, abusive relationships. You know so much and you do so much. You are literally doing the Lord's work.
Oh, thank you. It's heavy work, that's for sure. Heavy work.
Quite the resume, Alexis. Quite the resume.
Thank you.
So whenever I have a new guest on, our listeners, they always want to know, well, what's the relationship status of our guests? And so tell us, are you single, married, in a relationship? What's going on? Tell us.
I am married to my wonderful husband, Chris. We've been married since 2022. So almost 2 years. Yeah. 2022. Yeah, I think 2022. Yeah. We got married in November of 2022.
Wow. All right. Yeah. So that is just so exciting. And you all now have, you know, babies together, twinsies, two little twins. They are
little
adorable.
Cuties.
Wow. That is just so amazing. So, you know, kind of just like starting off, like, you know, for our audience, just to, like, for their reference. So you're based out of the Chicago suburbs, right? So you grew up out there?
Yep. So I did grow up out there. We did actually move. I'm originally from Indiana. So very small town called Farmland. Literally the name of the town.
This is my first time hearing about Farmland.
Very small town called Farmland, Indiana, kind of near like Ball State University.
Yeah.
We moved out here when I was 3, when my parents divorced and my mom met my stepdad. So we actually moved from small rural area to Lakeshore Drive in Chicago. So big culture shock there. Lived here for a couple of years and then we moved out to the suburbs.
Nice.
So I kind of like split between Indiana and the suburbs growing up because I'd live with my Nana in summertime and my parents during the year. So it's kind of nice little, you get the taste of a little bit of everything at that point.
Absolutely. So of all the places that you've lived, like whether like Indiana or even like in the city or even in the suburbs, what would you say is your favorite place that you've ever lived?
I think when it comes to living, the suburbs is my favorite. I like the access to everything because I definitely lived in the small town that was, 20, 30 minutes to the grocery store. And I just don't like to do that because I like to get things on a whim sometimes. But I love the city to visit. And I think if I was a single woman, I would definitely be in the city.
Yeah.
But with like a family and everything, I'm like, nah, the suburbs is where it's at for me right now.
Absolutely. Okay. And I can even assume that the suburbs is probably even easier to navigate having a family, because now you have to worry about, trying to find parking and
Oh yeah. Because there's so many little things that get added on once you have a family that you're just like, I never had to think about this. And now I do. Like, where can I take the stroller? Where can I do this? And you figure it out though.
Right. Yes, indeed. So, so you're a mom to twins. They're so adorable. And and you have like such a wonderful, handsome husband. Shout out Chris.
He'll appreciate that. He'll flip his little hair like, thank you, Sean.
And so, how has the family life been treating you? I'm sure, it's been, quite busy these last few years.
Oh, yeah. It was never our intention to get pregnant so fast. We pretty much ended up pregnant like the month after we got married. So we never really got to experience like married life together when we weren't already expecting children. So that was definitely a huge, not what I expected in life. And kind of gave me that whole, I guess, once you fall in love, everything happens pretty fast at that point. But it's great though. I love being a mom. I love it. It's opens you up in ways that you never expect to be opened up, and makes you work on things that you're like, ooh, I've been pushing that down for years. All right. But it's great. They bring you so much joy. Seeing their little smiles, you're like, okay, I'm doing something right in the world. Like, we're doing good. And it's having the best partner is the sole factor, and I think success when it comes to the family. So I love it. I love my little family, and I love taking them to all of our friends' events and all of that, because I firmly believe they should get out there and still we're still a theater family regardless of me having kids. So they're going to come to all the events.
They are the highlight every time they come around. Like, everyone is immediately direct shot towards the twins. Yep. We all drop what we're doing. We're like, wait, I'll be right back.
The theater kids put the spotlight on them at that point. We're all like, I'm nobody when you're here. Like, you do you.
I'm just so glad that we our theater family is just so close, and everyone is just everyone is just so great.
Oh yeah, best support system.
Yeah,
love it.
Absolutely. Trying to improve your skincare game? Guess what? I got a little something for you. You can improve the health of your skincare with the Vogue approved. Yes, you heard that right. Vogue as in Vogue magazines, the models. Yes, that Vogue. The Vogue approved beauty product, Herbal Face Food, the most potent anti-aging, multi-correction skincare product on the market. Yes. So hit that link in the show notes or video description and use our code SPHFF to get 20% off at checkout. Visit herbalfacefood.com to get started. That's herbalfacefood.com. All right. And use code S as in Sam, P as in pineapple, H as in Henry, F as in Frank, F as in Frank to get 20% off at checkout. That's SPHFF to get 20% off. All right. herbalfacefood.com. Okay. Y'all got the hookup. So let them know that Situaseans podcast sent you. All right. And so tell me, what is it like being a licensed social worker and a mental health professional? And I want to know what led to your passion for it.
So I don't think any social worker you ever meet will say that they went into it for funsies. It's not what you go into social work for. Almost any social worker you meet probably has trauma of their own. That's just the reality of the field, because we all say you have to be a little crazy to work with the little crazy,
Yeah.
But it's definitely, I think just with everything I went through in life, even the simplicity of divorce, which many people go through being a child of divorce at this point, but the simplicity of all those things leading up to where I was now, it was that wanting to be with people during the dark part of their life and being that person that maybe you needed. Like, I had great support, but there's definitely some things that I think now, knowing who I am, like, this could have been more beneficial, or I wish somebody would have said this to me, or I wish somebody would have been here for me, or that I would have felt comfortable enough saying something to somebody. So I think for me, it was just a lot of wanting. I find it a deep honor to be with people during the darkest parts of their life. I find it very soothing for us to be in the same like place together, and it's like, you're not alone. Yes, it feels dark right now, but you're not alone.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of what led me to doing it. It's definitely, you're never bored. That's the best description I can give. I've worked a lot of different populations and fields and everything within the social work world, and kind of found where I feel I'm meant to be right now. And so it's like, the kids make every day enjoyable. They make every day funny. They say the most darndest things.
I bet.
Oh, yeah. That you're like, wow, okay, I'm glad you're comfortable. And that's all you can say sometimes. But I adore it. I think the field of social work is an amazing field to be in, but I definitely think it's not for everybody. And it's like, you have to be open to really anything and everything, because you will, if you get shocked by conversation, that's kind of shocking in this field. Because I'm like, I tell my friends all the time, I'm just like, I really don't think you're going to say anything that I'm going to be like, what? Because that's my job, is literally listening to those kinds of things all day. So
yeah,
it's fun. It's hard, very hard work, but it's also like, sometimes you just get the fun little, oh my gosh, can I give you the tea? And you're just like, go off, queen. Like, if that's what you need from your therapist, do it. Let's do it.
Absolutely. Wow. And I can almost imagine, like, sometimes just even hearing and just like some of the stories or some of the things that happen with, like the people that you work with, how it, like, I can only imagine it's like hard to not take that home with you. Like, oh my God, like this person's going through this. This person just told me X, Y, Z, and wow, like now this is on my mind because I'm worried about them.
Oh yeah. That's definitely the tough part. And that's the part where I find that you have to have a good support system at home, no matter who it is. Or like, if you don't live with somebody else at home, even having a pet sometimes can help, or even just having someone you can call to kind of like decompress. I find for me, like, I like to decompress on the ride home. I like driving. So it's like, I usually can blast some music depending on how the day went, what kind of vibe we're looking for. I mean, it's tough. I had one of my kids, I had to call DCFS on about 2 days before my wedding.
Wow.
And so I like was literally leaving the same day that like this child was being removed from the home. And I was like leaving to go get married. And they're just like, my whole coworkers, all of them were like, we're fine. We've got it taken care of. And I'm sitting there like, how do I go get married when I'm just like thinking about this kid that I love so much? And like, so it's definitely where you have to learn how to take care of yourself, and you have to learn how to be able to brush some things off, and also just learn to not carry it all yourself. Like, it's okay to let it go and give it to somebody else, give it to God, give it to whoever you believe in, but like, you got to figure out how to let it go and just kind of like, or put it on the shelf, pick it back up on Monday, put it on the shelf for now.
Yeah, absolutely. And, even just knowing you in these last 3 years. So for a context for the audience, Alexis and I, we do shows together.
Yeah.
We met during Young Frankenstein.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. So, like in the 3 years that I've known you, you've always been such a great listener. Like everything that's like, whenever I feel like it was always easy talking to you and just sharing and being vulnerable with you. So I can see how, even in your job, this is what you do. You're used to being able to help people, talk with people, find solutions, problem solving. So
absolutely.
It's
definitely, that's what I firmly believe, that when you become a therapist, your first couple years, you're very like hesitant, and you want to be very like, I learned this theoretical approach in my master's degree, and that's just not it. Not the move. Like, it's the more you're yourself and your personality, even if it's like kind of aggressive at times, like different people need different kinds of therapists.
Yes.
Some people need you to be more like assertive and like, hey, what are you doing?
Exactly.
Like, while some people need more of that nurturing, kind of caring, motherly like relationship. So it's just, once you get comfortable in it, it's like, okay,
Yeah.
they need you for whatever they need you for, and you'll figure that out as you go. But be yourself. That's what they need. Genuineness in the room.
For sure.
Yeah.
And so, you know, whenever, even just speaking of like your day job and even with the acting stuff, like how do you balance all of that?
So before I had kids, I'll be honest, kids take up everything. But before I had kids, the acting was a lot of my space to go to. Like the theater was the people that would help me get through it all, the just stress reliever, really. Even when there was drama or whatever going on in the theater, it was still like everybody was there for each other and everybody knew what you did and knew you well enough to see your face and know like, you good? Like, and so I think while it was very difficult to balance it, just because I'm also not like a super late night person, it was still very much like, I love what I was doing. So it worked out in the end. But it was, once I had my family, it became a whole new balancing act. And it's definitely like where my husband and I sit there and think, one day I'll go back to doing some shows, but it's not while the girls are this age, since they're only 10 months right now. I'm like, I'm not ready. Maybe they're ready. I don't know. But like, I'm not ready for that yet. So it's kind of just figuring out, you know, what works best for you and your family, and a lot of communication of like, I'm going to go here this day, like coming here. I was like, this is where I'm going today. Okay. So you are going to have them for many hours by yourself. Do you understand that? Like, just trying to constantly work through doing something for yourself while also doing something for your family.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's amazing. And, you know, it's, you do so much. You have so many different roles as a mom, as a wife, as, you know, like as a social worker, and as a friend, as a daughter, you know, wow. Like all of these different buckets that you are juggling. I just want to say, like, you know, I commend you for that, because I know it's not easy.
No, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
You know, go all the way the fuck off.
Yes.
Yes. And now, you know what? Speaking of go all the way the fuck off, while we're here, get your go all the way the fuck off t-shirt. Go
do it,
right?
Do it.
Situaseanspodcast.com. Click on the merch tab and get your go all the way the fuck off t-shirt.
Yes, Queen. Yes.
Yeah. So tell us, how did you meet Chris?
So actually, when we were talking about my bio earlier, how I said that I volunteered in upstate New York for a year. So that's actually how we met, which is kind of funny because he's a Wisconsin boy and we met in upstate New York, even though we're both Midwesterners. But we were in the same volunteer program. It was called Lasallian Volunteers, but they're no longer a program at this time. But we were both in the program and both placed in upstate New York. He was doing more like campus ministry kind of things with the boys up there, while I was doing more social work kind of therapy. So we actually lived in the same house, kind of in community is what they called it, with religious brothers, which, if people are familiar, it's like the Christian Brothers. So they were kind of like the head of our household, along with us and a few other volunteers. So we met just kind of going into that program and like being like, okay, we're community members. Like, we need to support each other. We need to get along. That was kind of the basis of it. And then we were there the same time that like COVID hit and all of these things. So things changed very quickly and just kind of became like had to support each other as best friends. And then it was like, wait a second, is there a little something going on here?
Yeah.
And a lot of our coworkers at the time being like, oh, I knew something was there a long time ago. And we were like, nah, nah, it just happened. But they were all like, no, we've been seeing this for a while. And lo and behold, now we're married. So I guess there was something there all along.
There must be something there that wasn't there before.
I feel that song deeply.
Yes. Well, I'm so glad that in the end, it all worked out.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely never where I thought I would meet my husband, but here we are.
Yeah. And it's just crazy how fast time flies.
Oh, yeah.
For sure. Because even like, in the 3 years that I've known you, you got married, you had twins, like you're just continuing to excel in your career. I'm like, pop off, go all the way the fuck off.
Life moves fast.
Yeah.
So fast. It's crazy.
Indeed. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, can you do me a really quick favor? Can you please rate and review this podcast? Like hit that 5-star review, because I do read all the reviews because this helps me know how this podcast is helping others and how this podcast is serving you, because my job as a host is to serve you this podcast the way that you would prefer it to be. So kind of, switching gears here for a moment. I kind of want to know, kind of like go a little bit deeper. So you had shared with me that before your current, relationship, like in the past, you were in a toxic relationship. Yes. And, trigger warning for listeners, to just kind of set this up. So you were in a toxic, unhealthy relationship. Can you kind of share more about your story and what you went through?
Yeah. So this relationship I was in it for like 6 years. And I would say that the first 2 or 3 years, like he was good. Like there was really no problems when I think back at it. Like it was a genuine relationship at that point. And then the last 3 is when it got a little sketchy. And as I reflect on it over the years, I'm like, whew, okay, that was a lot heavier than I think I knew. Yeah. And I continue to process. And we actually started dating like in our teens. And so it's like, I feel like when people hear those kinds of things, they're just like, oh, it was just, high school fling or whatever. Yeah. And I'm just like, yeah, but thinking of it from a social work lens, I'm like, those are very formative years. Yes. And so if you're going through a toxic relationship that is not teaching you healthy relationship things, I mean, it really fucks with your brain a little bit, like, because we started dating when I was probably, I want to say 15 or 14. And we dated all the way up until I was like 21 and like college, all that kind of stuff together. So, like it was I don't regret it. That's for sure. Because I do think it does make a huge impact on who I am today. And I do think that it was genuine love at some point. And then something just switched at some point with him. And I still to this day kind of try to analyze that. But I think I'm slowly coming to terms with like, that's not mine to analyze. That's his to analyze. But it is my job to heal from it. So as much as it sucks and it's not my fault that all of these very unhealthy things happened during the relationship, I do think it came to the point of like, okay, but it is your job to heal. Yeah. Which isn't your fault, and that sucks. And that's where I think the anger part of it comes in a lot. But I think it's very crucial to do that for yourself because it does affect your future relationships heavily when you are in a toxic relationship, especially when you're in it for quite a bit of time, because you get so used to that's your normal and you think that is fine. Like, it's okay to be treated that way. But the reality is like when somebody is constantly putting you down, constantly like saying things in your ear that make you believe you're less than, and I think he had very narcissistic traits. And so I think it was tough because we were just in that cycle of like narcissistic abuse and it just kept going. And it was definitely something that in the time I didn't really recognize it, but I knew that I was feeling more and more drained as time went on. And then it kind of was becoming, okay, I'm going to get out. And then it was the love bombing and the no, like I'm going to fix everything. I'm going to do this for you. I'm going to like make sure everything is perfect for us. And then once you're kind of like, okay, like he's doing good. Went right back into the like you're pretty much just making you feel like you're worthless, kind of a thing, you know? And it gets really tough just because you do start to believe those things, because this is someone you love. Like, this is someone you do really care about their opinion. And so when it goes deep into that, like, they do have, and especially it's like, this is someone too who, like, you were intimate with, like, sexually too. So you're kind of like, you have that connection, you have the romantic connection, you have all of those things that it's like, this deeply affects you in a way that, like, you're not going to be able to process in the time that you're with this person.
Absolutely.
So it's definitely tough. It's like one of those things where you could go into so many details, but you're also kind of like, is that, do you go into the details to be educational or kind of like to share with people? Or are you going into the details to try to kind of like process it? Because if you're processing, I think you gotta figure that out yourself. Right. But if you're sharing just to kind of be like, this is where it's at, like, this is what it was, and this is factual.
Yeah.
Because it is a factual thing that happened to me, and it's something that I'm a lot better talking about now. But it's definitely, if I like look back at stuff from him, I still feel myself kind of being like, whew,
yeah,
feeling those feelings, you know, like of like intensity. Because that's the best way to describe it, is that it just felt intense all the time. Like, and he was never really physically abusive. I would say there were times, probably a little bit like trigger warning, like pushed it sexually a little bit, where you kind of be like, I don't know if I necessarily want to do that right now. Right. Because we're like in the middle of fighting. And then it's like, no, let's do it. And it's just like kind of the boundaries. Like it felt like there was no boundaries in the relationship, but like he could do whatever he wanted. He could go like be with girls, and the gaslighting and wow. Yeah. It's a lot of teaching yourself what all that means. Like, what is gaslighting? What is like, what was okay? What was not okay? What did maybe I perceive as like him trying to work through something, and like me trying to rationalize it? And it's like, no, it's still not okay. Like, he still can't treat you like that. And working through it over time has helped a lot, but it was pretty deep stuff.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
You know, and I just want to say thank you for, you know, just opening up and sharing that with our audience, because I'm sure a lot of, you know, a lot of people can definitely kind of relate to that in some way. Because you know, you have to put yourself first at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
I want to know, what did you do to kind of like find that courage to leave that relationship?
I feel like it kind of was how I was discussing earlier about that you start to kind of feel in the way like something's off. Like, you start to kind of get that feeling over time. What I've learned is that was me. The more angry and the more I was a lot more like dissociative and kind of like numb to everything at the end. Like, I feel like I was very apathetic, like no emotion, just couldn't feel anything. And I think that was me slowly realizing, like, I don't deserve this. And I've kind of learned over time that was my anger coming up of like, no, you deserve more than this. Like, the way he's treating you is not okay. But back then, I think it was just the simplicity of kind of getting to that space of like, this doesn't feel like it's filling my bucket at all. This doesn't feel like I'm getting anything out of this. It feels like I'm constantly putting forth effort and really getting nothing in return. And so I think it just got to the point of like trying to slowly step away and like kind of tell him, you know, like, I don't know, something's off. This doesn't feel the same like it always has. And I mean, it was having to fight it a long time. Like, there was definitely, the recommendation with them is always like no contact. Like, that's the only way to get over like a narcissistic relationship for a lot of people. But it took me a long time to go no contact. And I don't know what that was. I don't know if that was just the safety factor in my head of like, I want to know where he is, because like that helps me feel more safe. Because it was if I allowed him access to me, like, he was going to take it. It didn't matter if he was in a relationship or not. Like, wow, that was pretty consistent throughout the entire time that we broke up. And it was all that, you know, back and forth, breaking up, blah, 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 all that fun stuff. But I think the biggest thing that helped me walk away was just kind of slowly getting to that point of trying to almost not write down, but, take note of like the patterns in my head of like, okay, but every time I step away, you all of a sudden become loving. Every time I'm saying like, are you talking to another girl when we're trying to figure things out? It would become, the gaslighting of like you're seeing things, you never saw that on my phone. Like you never, and like make you second guess it. And so I think it just was all of those things. Once you slowly start taking note, you're like, something's off. And I don't know. I think leaving, I didn't leave the university, but like I had kind of my own space, but I also had my parents 20 minutes away. So I think being able to kind of like find those support systems where I didn't have to fully express what was going on, but like they knew me well enough was kind of my safe zone, my safety net. So it was like, okay, if a lot's going on here and I'm feeling that pull to like, maybe you should go to him. Maybe he'll be different this time. I would try to go home instead. And I would like spend time with my sister or something like that to be like, the biggest thing I think was my sister though, because I think we have a huge age gap. Like we have 14 years between us. And so I think for me, it was like, do you want that to be the example to your sister? Like if your sister ends up with someone one day, do you want that to be the kind of person she ends up with?
Right.
And I was kind of sitting back and being like, no, like I already witnessed my mom go through stuff like that. And so I think it was like, I need to break this cycle. Like I'm not going to end up in a marriage with this person because I know how much worse that's going to be. Mm-hmm. And so it was kind of having to make all those connections, like therapy, all those kinds of things. Like, thank God for therapy. But it was just a lot. It was a lot of time. I mean, 6 years when it was probably the last 2 of that was trying to leave constantly and just one reason or another going back. Because you feel that pull too. Like, it's just the reality of it. Yeah. You do love them. Even though it's a sick kind of form of love, you love them. Mm-hmm. And you've got to figure out how to kind of like cut that off.
Absolutely.
Get to that no contact zone, which is not easy.
Yeah.
Not easy.
It's all, for sure. It's always easier said than done.
Oh, yeah.
For sure. And even in my own, situation, I was in a toxic relationship for 2 years. Mm-hmm. We met in May 2020. Mm-hmm. And so we both came from abusive childhoods. So her dad was abusive towards her and her siblings. My stepdad was abusive towards me and my siblings, like verbally, physically, mentally, all of it. Mm-hmm. And I had theater, I had music, I had all these different outlets to kind of, get past that. Yeah. And so she didn't have that, like any of those outlets growing up. And so we would argue a lot. And whenever we would get into arguments, she would say, I hate you. Or she would just like gaslight me like, oh, I don't feel that way and neither should you. Or you're just, you're like, you're seeing things or, So I definitely, like after the first, I don't know, maybe after like the first year, I was like, okay, I need to like step away from this. I can't do this. Right. And I had a whole, like exit plan. Okay. Like I'm going to just do this and this and this to make sure that I can get out, with my mental health and psyche still intact.
Yeah. That sounds crazy, but it's true.
And so I had left that relationship and like literally I had left that relationship maybe like a month before we started Young Frankenstein.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so maybe like, I don't know, around like November or something like that, of that same year, she had texted me, was like, and just said all the things to reel me back in.
Yep. They're so good at it.
Yeah. And so I had told her, okay, well, I'm going to have one foot in and one foot out because I don't trust that you fully healed from, the things that you went through in your past. And I don't want to continue to carry your baggage or be the subject of your projections. Yeah,
set those boundaries.
And so she said, oh yeah, I've changed all that. I'm like, okay, well, I'm still going to have one foot in, one foot out because I just, still don't know. Anyway, so about, I don't know, maybe about 7-8 months going into this, like for the second time, we weren't arguing every day, but we were arguing maybe like, I don't know, every other day. And that was still like a lot for me because growing up, my mom and stepdad argued all the time.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I don't want that in my adult relationship. And so after the second time, I was like, hey, I can't do this anymore.
Right.
Because I know that it takes two to tango and everything, but she would just say things to really kind of just set me off. Like, so example, growing up, I've rarely ever heard the words "I love you" from like any parental unit. So whenever I had got around to saying that to her, like, yeah, like I truly meant it. But whenever we would argue, she would say, "I hate you." And of course I was like, hey, could you not say that? Because like, it's very triggering for me.
Right.
Like, I understand that you're frustrated, but if you truly don't hate me, maybe don't say that. And she would still be like, I hate you. I fucking hate you. like I hate your fucking soul. Like,
wow.
Really going in.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, after that, I was just like, okay, I just can't. And then, we would just argue about the most petty things. So yeah, I just learned after that relationship to not, not ignore red flags. Like, hey, if we are going through these things, or if she's displaying these kind of toxic qualities, maybe I need to, I guess kind of see myself out. And so what I've done, especially in the dating world, because, I'm still single these days, but it's kind of hard dating with intention now that I'm about to leave, you know?
Right.
And of course, we're recording in Time Machine. So by the time this comes out, I'm already in California. So no, Alexis didn't fly out to California to come onto the show.
No.
But yeah, so even just dating these days, I prefer to date people that are further along in their, mental wellness journey than someone that doesn't know how to process.
Absolutely. And that's such a huge thing for what I realized I needed was, because it's like to this day, he was so closed off that it was hard for me to really figure out like, why are you the way that you are? And like, especially as a social worker, that's all I want to do is that I'm just like, why are you the way that you are? Why are you doing this? And so I think that made it hard to process, one, because I was like, I could pick up on little things here and there, like issues within the family that I could see when I was in front of him. But it was definitely never like anything that I felt was like a blaring, that makes sense. Like that ding, 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 like it was never anything like that, but it just gets so tough just because you're like, I feel almost anybody who was in a toxic relationship had that whole, all right, I'll give it another shot. Here we go. Because we all think like, maybe it's different. Maybe, right. But it's just the reality I've come to terms with is the fact that it's like, if you're really fighting with anyone you love and they're intentionally going for like low blows of something that, especially if you've set the boundary saying that triggers me, or, like, I really wish you would find a different way to say that, things like that. And they're still going for that. It's like, that's not respect. Like, that's not the basic foundation of not even a relationship, a friendship, like it's just the simplicity of, hey, I don't like that. Well, I'm going to do it anyway. It's like, that's disrespectful. Like, it's like, come on. It's just, they ask you for a basic thing, and they're not asking you to even sit there and like change your whole world for them. They're not asking you, because there are some people who take it a little too far and, are like, you need to avoid all of my triggers. And it's like, okay, well, no, that's not how the real world works. Exactly. But like in a relationship though, there are things that you can do to try to be like, okay, I don't like the way you said that, but I hear where you're coming from in it. And that was kind of my biggest thing, how to learn, because I realized back then I just had no boundaries. Like, I just don't think I had any emotional boundaries that I put up to protect myself, because I think I was so focused on like fixing them or, pleasing them, trying to make sure they were emotionally okay, that like, I think I built the demon up a little bit more because it was, you're the center of the world, not me. And so it's like over time, you kind of realize, okay, well, maybe that's not the healthiest dynamic to have, because now where are you in this? Like, now you're fixing everything, which when you come from childhoods, like it sounds like both of us had similar childhoods, because mine definitely wasn't as abusive as it sounds like yours was, but it definitely, like, the divorce was for a reason, and my dad is very absent father kind of a thing. And so it's very like, now going through therapy, you sit here and you're like, oh, I know where it all comes from. And you intellectualize the whole thing, but you're also sitting there like, but am I actually doing the work to like heal from that?
Yeah.
And that's, I think, the hardest part is like, you can intellectualize it all day long and be like, it comes from this and this and this. And
yeah.
But it's like, you've got to actually sit down and be like, yeah, but how does it make you feel though? Like,
exactly.
How does it actually make you feel when somebody does something like that? Like, yes, you've got the why. Sure. That doesn't help though if you don't actually process the feeling and work through how do I avoid this in the future, or how do I work through it if it happens again?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's one thing I really like about our generation is like we are putting mental health first. We are highlighting that. And even with the increase of social media, you hear all these creators say, yeah, like how therapy has helped them, or hey, get help. Because I go to therapy. Absolutely love it. Best thing ever.
Yep. Yeah, this generation's really good at also speaking about like breaking the cycle, because I feel like family generational trauma has been a thing for so long.
Right, exactly. Because our parents' generation was always just compile and compress, put it away for later.
Push it down, push it down, and you're just like, I don't wanna.
Exactly.
This feels awful. Like, I don't want to do that anymore. And it's like, I think we're also really good at trying to like sit back and feel okay with saying like, I'm glad my mom and my stepdad's relationship works for them. And I do think it really works for them. I think they're wonderful for each other. I think that like it's a great person for, especially after like my dad, like my mom finding my stepdad, he's great. We love him. But it's like, but there are aspects of their relationship that I'm like, I don't want that for me. And like that's not mean. That's not wrong. Like, it's just, you're a different person than your parents. And it's okay to be like, for me, I want something else. Like,
absolutely.
I'm glad it works for you. Props to you. Like, go off. But like for me, I need this, this, and this. And I've noticed that over time, and that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
But setting those boundaries are hard, man.
Aren't
They're
they?
so hard.
Yes. It's so important to set those boundaries for sure. And even just like, like parental wise, like I do hope that like my mom like one day puts herself first, because for so long she's always put my stepdad first, and he and I have no relationship because because of like all the abuse and everything. I left when I was 17, so I was just sleeping on friends' couches like my senior year of high school, and then freshman year of college, went to college in California. Too expensive to live out there. Moved back, finished up at Columbia College, Chicago. But then eventually I had found my own place or whatever. But so just through all of that, I was like, I need this man like out of my life because I don't want that negativity.
Yep.
And one day I definitely want to be a dad one day for sure. But just all those experiences, I'm like, okay, I know what not to do as far as like treatment wise.
Right.
So for sure, I think our generation is definitely the generation that's trying to break that cycle that our parents kind of went through for sure.
Stepping stones,
Exactly.
You get there eventually, but it definitely. The right person comes at the weirdest times.
Ain't that the truth?
That's for sure. That's for sure.
So even just given like your story and your situation, how has that affected the way that you dated after that before you met Chris?
Yeah.
And even with even how has it affected your relationship with Chris as well?
Yeah. So it definitely affects relationships moving forward, how you handle yourself, how you don't handle yourself, like all those kinds of things. I realized after that relationship, I did end up getting into another one. I don't remember how long it was after, maybe a year after, because it was still in college. And I realized at that point, I went from my relationship with my first boyfriend that was toxic and it was very emotionally intense relationship all the time, like always felt, up here to your neck, to like the next guy I went to, like he was a good guy. He was, like, when I think back to him, he wasn't a bad guy. He had his own stuff, but like didn't really take it out on me too much, but definitely had his own mental health things that looking back, he needed to work on. And that's fine. I think what I realized was that I went to him because he was kind of almost like emotionally unavailable. And it's almost like I needed that opposite end of the spectrum at that time. because I went from so emotionally intense where like I was feeling way too many things on a day-to-day basis to like this guy who felt safe because of the fact that like it wasn't always going to be like intense emotions all the time. It was like he could give the simplicity of, you know, like support and being there for you, but it definitely wasn't going to go too deep.
Right.
And reality is like I knew in the moment that it was like this isn't going to end in marriage. Like I knew that, but it was kind of like, but this is what I think I need right now.
Yeah, it was different.
Yeah. And so it was very different. And like, I fully appreciate him. I think he was a wonderful guy. I really have no qualms with him at all. We did date for, I think, 3 years because I guess I just don't do any relationship short, I guess. I guess that's just how I roll. But like we did date for 3 years and like helped each other through school. We both graduated. We both got through that. And like, and he's a great guy. And it's like, I really have no qualms. And after him, it was kind of like, I did try dating apps in between him and my ex, maybe a little bit after him, but I know I tried it in between. And I think I went on like a couple dates and I was like, I don't know about this, man. Like, and I think part of it was also the safety of being a woman college aged and kind of being like, I don't know how safe I feel in this environment. Cause it's very, you know, you can tell all the ladies where you're going, you can give them your location, you can do all that, but there's still that kind of like uncertainty of, are you gonna kill me?
Right.
Like, which it's like, seems like a joke, but you're like, I really feel like I don't know. I'm like, there's so many TV shows these days, I don't know.
Exactly.
And so and I think it was also like, I hadn't done enough work on myself to feel comfortable with just throwing myself at someone I had never met in person. Yeah. And so I think I quickly realized that for me, it was more the in-person things helped me. And I felt weird getting those weird messages when people were just clearly looking for a hookup. And you're like, okay, like I am not in a good mental space because if I do that, that is not healthy for me. Right. Because I'm like, I definitely had my time after my ex where I was like, let's explore.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it was what it was. Like I did it, but it's definitely, I look back and I go, oh, I know why I did it. And it probably wasn't the most healthy relationships, but you know, was what it was. Don't regret it at this point.
Right. We live and we learn.
Yeah. And it was all like safe people that you're just like, yeah, sure. Yeah. Why not?
Yeah.
Like, so it's just, you kind of live and learn, figure it out as you go. But it's definitely, I think they were what I needed at the time. And when I got into my relationship with Chris, it was, we both come from our own traumas, and I let Chris kind of tell his story as he wants because that's his own thing. But it's definitely, I think both of us having our own traumas helped us both grow exponentially in our relationship because I think we were both determined before we even met each other to kind of be like, we will not have that for our future families.
Yeah.
And when we were like that separate, it made it even stronger when we got together to kind of be like, this is not like, we will work at this really hard because we will not have a household like both of us did growing up.
Yeah.
And that's just, it's unacceptable for us. And so we're like, whatever we need to do to work on it is what we're going to do. And I think that helped a lot. One, I had never had any relationship. And in my family was I was the only kid of divorce in my family. And I was an only child until my sister was born with my stepdad. So like for a long time, I was the only kid of divorce in the family. And while my family never was like weird about that, it definitely was as I grew up kind of realized, you know, like you guys just don't get that. Like you don't get it. I'm like, it's not a huge thing because it was so young, but it is a huge thing because I was so young. Like I'm like, trust versus mistrust is established in that third, like 0 to 3 years.
Yeah.
And my parents got divorced at 3 years. So like, there's a huge reason why I'm very kind of like, especially with men, like in relationships. And so I think it was kind of learning over time how to deal with that myself and then finding someone else who also wanted to deal with their stuff. But learning how to communicate was the hardest thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think communication is the key to successful relationships. So when you come from something where basically you were told not to communicate in your toxic relationship, because I mean, that's basically what they were doing was, shut your mouth.
Exactly.
And listen to me. And so you're like, okay, like, don't express myself at all. So I became very like inward about everything. And I've learned over time that I have an extremely anxious attachment to people. Like I get very, you're going to leave. You're going to leave. Like if anything goes wrong, you're going to leave. That's is what it is. And so it's like Chris and I would get into like an argument or something. And like, we've always been very calm in our arguments. We don't yell because that's a thing that I told him. I was like, there is never a reason to yell. Mm-hmm. I know some people may disagree with that, but for me, I'm like, you can talk firmly. You can do all of that. There's not a reason to yell. Like,
it's so counterproductive. I agree with you.
It doesn't do anything.
It just adds fuel to the flame.
Yeah. So I'm just like, you can have a heated discussion for sure. And like, make sure that your feelings of like frustration are known. But like, it's that whole like assertive language. Use assertive language. You don't need to be yelling at the other person. And so like, if we ever are getting to the point where we feel the other person is like getting too heated, it's usually like, okay, I need you to go take a minute. Like, or maybe we just need to sit with this right now, but like, we're not doing that. Don't yell at me. I won't yell at you. We won't yell at our kids. I just don't agree with it. And so I was kind of learning how do you, one, set your own emotional boundaries? How do you communicate them? And then how do you also like lovingly call someone out?
Yeah.
Because a lot of people, I always hear, like, oh, like the one who's meant to be the one won't make you cry. And I'm like, that is the biggest load of bullshit I've ever heard in my life. I'm like, that is so untrue.
Right.
I'm like, actually, they will like rip you open. And it fucking sucks. Like, it's like, it hurts, but it's a good hurt. Like,
because they care.
Exactly. Like, it's like, there are so many times that we have to sit there and kind of be like, are you possibly putting your trauma on your child right now, or are you actually trying to help them grow? Like, and like, we've gotten to a point where we can say those literal words to each other, but like, we couldn't say that in the beginning, like it had to grow into that and kind of like calling them out of like, hey, love you, but I think you need to work on this a little bit. Like, especially when it's like, I have an anxious attachment and like, he's kind of like an avoidant attachment kind of person. So when those two come together, it gets very difficult because it's like, he's very, like, let me just sit with it and like not say a word and internally process, and kind of like, let me just sit by myself and like, I need to go away from you to kind of process. And I'm a lot more of like, we got to talk it out. Like, what do you mean you're going to walk away from me? Like, cause then I get into you're leaving. That's what you're doing. Like, you can't convince me otherwise. Mm-hmm. And so it becomes a very like both sitting kind of there, like, okay, are you ready? Am I right? Okay, go ahead. But like understanding where the other person's coming from of like, I get why you feel the way you do, but I also need to express that like, you hurt me. Mm-hmm. And like being okay with that. That doesn't mean the world's over. That doesn't mean your relationship's over. It's okay to hurt each other. Like, but the person that you're meant to be with, it hurts if you have something to heal from, and everyone has something to heal from. So
yes, that part.
Yeah.
That part.
Yeah. It's hard. Like, communication is so hard. Yeah. Especially when you're not given examples on how to like do that growing up.
Right. Oh yeah. Yeah. Because I agree with you on that one as well, because I know even in my upbringing, we weren't allowed to express feelings. Mm-hmm. So I agree 1,000% with you. It is hard to communicate. And of course, we have to grow into that. Okay, because I was silenced as a kid or silenced in previous relationships, how can I work through and work this with myself to be open and to communicate with my partner? Mm-hmm. Because I want to communicate. I just have to get adjusted and get used to, approaching things in this more open space that I'd never had in the past.
It's so hard. So hard. It just rips you open and you're like, this sucks. I see why people do all the other things. Like, it definitely made me realize that, like, I see why you did that, because this hurts. And if you're not comfortable with like feeling a little hurt, then you are going to do all of the weird things that like hurt other people.
Yeah.
Because you just don't know how. And it's like, I can have empathy towards that now, but it's like back then I was like, okay, you suck. Like no ifs, ands, or buts. You suck. And it's like now I can kind of be like, okay, you're your own person. And I'm still going to keep no contact with you. But like, I hope you're well. I've gotten to that point where I can at least sit back and be like, I hope you're well. Mm-hmm. And I hope you are healing. I do. I genuinely hope that for you because like, I know I am. Mm-hmm. So I hope that you are not putting your shit on other people still. Right. It feels so much better when you just choose to heal and you choose to actually work on it. And like, it hurts, but like, it feels good because it's, you just realize over time how much you change. And it's like, you realize you're healing too.
Absolutely. And I think this is like so valuable too, that you spoke on all of these topics, because I think this also humanizes, licensed professional, workers like yourself and counselors and therapists and so many different practices in that mental and emotional health space. Because I think sometimes we forget even our therapists that we see as superheroes. Yeah, they're people too. They go through things too. Like social workers, they go through things as well. Like we're all human. So thank you for humanizing yourself.
Of course. I try to do that daily at my job with little kids. I'm like, did you ever think that maybe I'm in a bad mood? I'm just like, and I'm sorry for taking it out on you. That was not nice of me, but like, maybe I'm in a bad mood too. And they're like, but you're a teacher. And I'm just like, no, I'm a counselor, but I hear what you're saying.
Exactly. Yes. And, I just want to say, again, I commend you too for all the work that you've done on yourself. And, even just seeing the love that you and Chris have for each other and for your daughters. I know that you all are phenomenal parents, and I'm just so glad that you all broke that cycle. And you're sharing these positive values with your kids, and I just cannot wait to continue to see how your family flourishes.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Situaseans podcast is an open platform covering dating, relationships, mental and emotional life experiences. If you are looking to advertise your brand or product or would like to sponsor the show, send an email to situaseanspod@gmail.com. That's situaseanspod@gmail.com.
So tell us, in your experience and even just what, your perception, what do you think are keys to a successful relationship?
I think, like we have been talking about, communication is number one. Like it sounds so cliche when people are just like, communication is key, but it literally is the foundation of your relationship. And so I think being able to work on that in yourself of how you need to communicate and what you need out of the person allows you to learn to advocate for yourself and for your relationship. So I think the communication is a huge part. Along with communication is the setting boundaries. I think so many people are not taught how to healthily set boundaries, because that's majority of what I see, even in practice as a social worker, is a lot of people thinking it's mean to, tell somebody that like they don't want to hang out with them right now, or, but I'm just like, it's okay to tell somebody that you need some space. It's okay to tell someone you love that, how they said something did not sit right with you, or things like that. So those are kind of like big ones for me that I've realized. And one of the biggest things is also just like, heal yourself. Like, you've got to heal yourself. You've got to love yourself. So many people think that that's such like I'll figure it out as I go. And it's like, you genuinely cannot love someone else until you at least love yourself a little bit.
Facts.
Because it's like, what else? How do you know how to like express love if you don't know how to express it to yourself? And it's just, you've got to do it. It's so crucial for your own happiness too, to be able to like sit back. And I know growing up, I was constantly the sensitive one all the time in my family. I was always the sensitive one, the crier, all those kinds of things. And like, I like really put that on myself growing up. Like I was like, oh, I'm so sensitive. Like I just have a lot of feelings and I know that is true. Like I do have a lot of feelings. No, I'm a Libra.
Oh, okay, I'm a Pisces, so I have a lot of feelings. So I was about to say, but yeah.
I'm a Libra. So is my husband. So works out. But I remember kind of getting to this point now in adulthood where one day I was sitting back and like, I was just kind of like owning it, you know? Like I was just like, yeah, I have a lot of feelings. So fucking what? Like,
yeah.
I'm like, when you find the right person and when you also heal a little bit yourself, you just learn that, okay, cool. You have a lot of feelings. Awesome. That also helps you be empathetic. That also helps me do my job. That also, you know, like those things are like superpowers to me now versus back then it was a lot of like almost feeling ashamed of it. Like, oh man, I'm crying all the time or, you know, something must be wrong with me or like, yeah, he is right. I am being sensitive. And so like that really got in my head, especially in a toxic relationship, because you're like, you are being sensitive. Like this is all your fault. Just chill out. And so I realized that kind of all connected.
Right.
And then now it's kind of funny because when I was a kid, I was shy. Like I was shy. I didn't talk. Like I was very kind of like inward. I never copped an attitude because it was very like, I respected my mom's authority and that's how it would be. And like, no offense, I don't question authority, you know?
Yeah.
And it's like now I kind of grow up and after healing and after doing all this kind of work, it's funny because like at work, I'm kind of known as like the counselor that has like a little bit of attitude. And I'm just like, yeah, because I think over time, what I learned was that I realized boundaries are you teaching people how to treat you. Mm-hmm. So it's not a bad thing. It's literally teaching people like, I'm not okay with you talking to me that way. And so while it may come off as attitude to people, to me, I'm just saying, no, you're not going to treat me that way. Point blank done.
Right.
And so it's like, so do I end up getting a lot of the teenage girls that have attitude issues? 100% I do, because I usually will meet them with attitude. I'm not going to be like, all right, let's go. And we kind of have this ongoing back and forth of where I'm just like, you are not welcome in my office if you are talking to me that way. And I know you want to talk to me, so fix it. And then we can chat.
Right. Yeah.
And so it's kind of like, it's funny because while it comes off as sassy and things like that now, it's like, I see sass in my daughter, even though she's 10 months old. And I'm sitting here like, but yeah, she's going to be CEO one day, guys. Like, I'm like, let her be sassy. Let her. I'm like, she's telling us I don't like that.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, just because she's 10 months old doesn't mean she can't do that. And I'm like, now are there times where I'm like, okay, honey, you don't got to yell it. Like, I get it. You don't want to eat the egg. Okay. Like, be like, but you could just nicely be like, you don't need to be yelling at me. So it's kind of funny because over time you learn with like the key to successful relationships is a lot of all of these things like communication and like and boundaries and all those things, which when you really dig deep means work on yourself. You know, like it's just, we can blame all day. And while there are people who do things to us that definitely affect us, and that is their fault for what they did, it is ultimately your responsibility to heal from that and to not put that on other people. Yeah. I remember my stepdad said to my mom once, it's not fair that you keep comparing me to your ex-husband. And like that sat with me pretty hard because I'm like, at first it sounds like a harsh statement, you know, because it sounds kind of like, well, I think she's just trying to express, you know, that like because of her past relationship, this is blah, blah, blah. But I think that's where a lot of people go wrong, is that we get into a new relationship or friendships or whatever, and we're like, well, because of my toxic relationship, I'm like this. Yeah. And people don't think, what do you do with that?
Right.
Like, it's like, okay, great. Now what? Exactly. You know, like, because it's like I can sit here all day and say, well, because of my toxic relationships, I'm super anxious that you're going to leave me. Right. And it's like, but is that fair to put that on my husband all the time? To be like, you're going to leave because he did, or you're going to leave because my dad did. It's like, no, that's kind of fucked up. Like he's never done anything to do that to you. Like, so it's kind of like connected to the emotion that you have rather than like connecting it to, well, let me just express this and it's your responsibility to fix whatever you're doing. Yeah. That's making me feel that way. That's when we get into that whole, you know, people thinking that everybody should avoid your triggers. And it's like, that's not how life works, honey.
Exactly. We're all going to, get on each other's nerves every once in a while. But, it's how you communicate and how you can work through that. So.
Yeah. A stranger's not going to sit here and be like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like, it's like, no, you just got to learn to work with it. Like,
yep.
it is what it is.
Exactly. All right, Alexis, are you ready to unpack some Hinge or unhinged dating app prompt screenshots?
Let's unpack it.
Awesome. All right. So this first one says, my greatest strength, my joy and mental well-being, smiley face. I'm really positive, rational, and grounded. I'm also not afraid to apologize when I'm wrong. Is this hinged or unhinged?
I can see it as hinged. I see a little toxic positivity, a little bit. Like I could see it definitely being one of those people that's just like, everything's fine, we're good. And you're like, okay, it's okay to be sad. Like it's fine, it's all good. So it's definitely one of those where it's like, I wouldn't immediately toss it out, but I would kind of be like, okay.
Yeah.
But what do you do with other feelings? I'm glad that's your strength, but like, is there anything else that's like going on? I don't know.
Yeah. I agree. I definitely think it's hinged, but I am a little worried, like, oh, you're really positive. Like, that's fine. But like, my question is, what if like, how do they process if they get upset? Like, is it like really positive when the highs are highs, but then like just really bad or really like, I guess kind of just, I don't know, almost really intense when things are,
Yeah. And kind of like with like saying like, I'm always grounded, and it's like, okay, but if also like your greatest strength is like your positivity and joy, like what does grounded mean to you? Like, does that mean that you just try to make everything positive?
Right.
Because that's not necessarily grounded. Like,
exactly.
But it could be hinged. It could be fine.
Yeah, for sure. We'll give this a hinge. Yeah, hinge like, beige kind of yellow beige flag.
Yeah, exactly.
The second one says, when I need advice, I go to my notes app where I pathologize. I'm sorry, was it pathologize and intellectualize every single negative feeling I've ever had, aka spiraling into a delusional trance, which is almost as healing as my therapy sessions. There's a lot here. There's a lot to
unpack. And that's on their dating profile. Wow, that's a lot to unpack.
And see, these are perfect, especially for this episode, because I'm like, I need to go to a professional for this one.
Yeah. I mean, my immediate response is unhinged for that one, because to me, it's like, so every time you have a negative thought, you go into your phone.
Right.
And you write it down. And mixed with this also like, I'm guilty of being an intellectualizer in therapy. It took me a while to find a therapist that I was okay with, because like they got to call me out. Yeah. Because like I am a therapist. I can intellectualize all day. Like I can sit here and do the whole, this is where it comes from. This is why I'm upset, blah, blah, blah. But like we talked about earlier, you got to process that. That's Absolutely. Not processing. Yeah. That's just being like, I understand where it comes from. Cool.
Right. What are you going to do with it now?
Yeah. And so it's like, to me, and the fact that they even like put at the bottom, just the kind of simplicity of just like, it's going into a delusional trance. I'm like, and you're telling strangers this. Right. Like, these are strangers. Like, these people don't know you.
Exactly.
I'm like, it's one thing to be like talking with your bestie, on the couch and being like, I do this. And so then your bestie can kind of be like, it's a little nutso, but you do you. But like, I feel like if I was seeing that, I'd be like, so say we get in an argument. Right. It's like, are you going to be like pulling out your phone and being like, damn, I don't know. I think that is extremely unhinged behavior.
Right. Be like, you're such a.
But I know where that comes from. So, and it's like, that's not how. And I don't really get like almost as healing as my therapy sessions. I'm like, I understand writing stuff down to take to therapy. I get that 100%.
For sure.
But like, I even like sometimes if I'm doing therapy and somebody feels the need to like write down in the moment multiple things, like it's one thing if it's one thing I've said and they're like, oh, I want to hold on to that. I'm like, fair enough. But like if they're the whole session, you know, like trying to constantly like write things down and I'm just like, you're intellectualizing this. And that's not a good thing.
Right.
Like it took me a long time to realize that, but it's like, ooh, I don't know. Like that would not make me be like, yeah, swipe right. You know, like I'd be like, maybe not.
Because like I understand the intent. This person's trying to make themselves vulnerable, but there is a such thing as being a little bit too forward too soon when you don't know that person.
Right. But it's like if somebody opens your notes app, man, they know everything. And that's embarrassing. Like,
right. I would love to see this person's notes
right.
app.
Right. Because I'm sitting here being like, what do you mean every negative thought? Like, like if you don't like a food, do you write it down? Like I would be interested to see like what is your mind like?
Yeah.
Have they shown that to their therapist? That's what I want to know.
Ooh, yeah.
Like, have they expressed this to their therapist that they do this?
Ooh,
because I wonder what their therapist would say about that.
Right. Their therapist would probably say the exact same thing that you just said. Like,
I feel like as a therapist, I'd be like, okay, let's unpack that. Like, let's discuss that.
Yeah. I agree. This one's definitely unhinged.
Yeah.
And if to the listener that submitted this, if you're watching or listening to this, like definitely send a follow up because I want to know if you have shared this with your therapist.
Right?
And what did your therapist say?
I'm interested.
So this last one says, you should not go out with me if you're figuring out your dating goals or looking for a short-term relationship. Is this hinged or unhinged?
I think that one can be hinged because I think that's just setting your boundary of, you know, like I'm not interested in a hookup. Mm-hmm. I'm not interested in, you know, summer fling or whatever. Like, kind of just putting straightforward out there that I know what I want. Now, do I think people automatically, you know, see you don't want what I want and they move on, and that's sometimes a mistake. Yeah, but because you never know. My husband fought me. I had to chase my husband, I'm not gonna lie. And I was pretty determined.
Yes.
But like it's stuff like that where it's like I think it's good to know what you want out of a relationship in the sense of like, you know, you want long term or you know that you're looking for something more serious. Yes, that is perfectly okay to be like, no, don't be DMing me saying you up, you know,
right.
like let's not be doing that. But I do think people need to be careful about automatically writing someone off, especially if you meet them in the real world. I think on dating apps, it's pretty like straightforward, but it's like if you meet someone in the real world who's just like, I'm not really looking for anything right now. It's like, okay. Mike, I wasn't looking for anything when I was volunteering in upstate New York. Like dating was not on my mind, you know, but it's like, there he was.
Yeah.
And was he ready for me? No, but look at this. Like
the universe brought you two together.
The cross stitchings are all there, you know?
I definitely agree with you on this prompt. I think, you know, it's hinged because they're expressing like their boundaries, expressing like what they want. You know, it's so, I think that's another thing too. It's so important to be able to just share what's on your mind, where you're at. But at the same time, dating app versus reality, it's hard to kind of understand someone's intentions or context between the two. So for sure.
It's funny when you see our wedding vows, like when we wrote some of our own for our wedding, and it's a lot of my husbands are, I thought this is what I needed, and then I got you. I thought this is what I needed, and then I got you. And so it was so much of like how I try to tell people where I'm just like, I'm telling you, like you think you know.
Yeah.
And my biggest thing that I say to him all the time is he's everything I could have never dreamed of, because like I couldn't have ever imagined the person that he is.
Yeah.
And it's like, he's perfect for me. He is. And it's like, we both have our faults for sure, but we're perfect for each other.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, but you don't know that. You don't know that. Like, you think you know what you want, and then this person walks in front of you and you're like, you're nothing what I imagined. But here we are.
Yes, you two are the cutest ever. Every time I see you all at social gatherings, I'm just like, yes, I want that one day.
Oh, thanks. Thanks.
So yeah, continue to, like, both of you, continue being you, continue to be like such wonderful friends, wonderful, like husband and wife, wonderful parents, like, like all the things.
Of course. Love it.
And to the listener, thank you for submitting that, like your prompts and everything. So definitely continue to submit your stories and all that good stuff. And thank you so much. We appreciate you submitting those.
Oh yeah. Fun to unpack.
Yes. And I think those were the perfect ones to unpack with a mental health like therapist and a counselor and a social worker.
Yep.
So yes, go all the way the fuck off.
Yes.
Thank you so much to the listeners again for submitting everything. I just want to say thank you, Alexis, for coming on to the show.
Of course.
Yeah, it's always you bring such a light everywhere you go. So
that's so sweet. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that you brought that light here onto this show and you gave so much insights to our listeners.
Thank you. I'm glad we got to do it before you moved too.
Yeah, absolutely. So can you share with our listeners how they can get involved with like therapy or like resources to go, or even how they can get in contact with you if you want to share any resources or whatever?
Yeah. So, I mean, when it comes to therapy, it's kind of depends where you live kind of a thing. But normally it really can be a quick Google search. Like it doesn't have to be that difficult. If you do have friends who are in either work in therapy or are in therapy themselves, I always think it's a good thing just to ask them where they go, just to get firsthand point of view, just to kind of hear because I have a bunch of different ones that either I used to work at or I know people, and so I'll refer them to them sometimes if I think that they're a good fit. But I think sometimes it's you need to find your own person, but I can send you a link to this person, or there is things like Psychology Today and stuff like that. Those don't always have all the people around you. So I think it's definitely worth a shot to keep searching into, different therapy places. There's lots of different levels of therapy too. So, I mean, I think knowing for yourself what you need, are you needing something more of talk therapy, this kind of a thing where you're talking back and forth one-on-one? Cool. That's called outpatient therapy a lot of the time, or just one-on-one therapy. But if you're in a little bit more of a mental health crisis kind of state, or if you're maybe struggling a little bit more, but not quite hospital level, there are other levels too. There's intensive outpatient therapy. That's one of those where you get to go home, but I like to call it a full-time job of mental health. So it's kind of 9 to 5. Sometimes they have morning and afternoon programs, but 9 to 5, you're going here and you're working on your mental health all day long, doing groups, therapy, all those kinds of things. Then you're coming home at night.
Yeah.
So there's things like that where it's if you maybe need to focus a little bit more intensely on whatever's going on, cool, do it. But if you're having any kind of intense kind of thoughts, any kind of suicidal ideations, anything like that, then I would either call 911 if you can't be safe enough in your own home and you don't know if you can make it to the hospital, call 911, or I think it's 988 is the mental health hotline now. There's also texting lines, things like that you can do, or just go to your nearest hospital and just kind of express what's going on, work through it. Yeah. It's okay to get some help. It's okay. And sometimes if you can't be safe, the safest place to be is the hospital. So
absolutely.
Just make sure you're taking care of yourself. That's all.
Yes. I really appreciate you sharing that with everybody to kind of give us a reminder as some resources, because I think sometimes we forget that there are people out there that want to help. So
yeah, absolutely. We all want you here.
Yes.
You matter. You're important here.
Yes.
You have a role to play in this world.
Absolutely. Yes. So definitely, reach out to those resources. Alexis just shared so many great resources, look into it. And we like she said, we want you here. You matter. Your words matter. Your opinions, thoughts, everything about you matters.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So if you all want to, submit to the show, like your screenshots, like your dating app screenshots, or even like your stories, submit it to situationspodcast.com/submit. The second way to submit to the show is call the hotline, 312-586-2664. It's an automated hotline system. You call, it goes right to voicemail. Leave a voicemail submission if you feel so inclined. Or if you want to just leave a submission that just says, hey, Sean, I like what you're doing. Keep it up. I'll take that too.
I'll take the compliment.
Right, exactly. Thank you. And the third way is to email us, situationspod@gmail.com. So you got 3 ways to submit. I cannot wait to hear from you. All right. So if you're on a boat, a plane, a train, another universe, hey, you could probably be, one of Alexis's colleagues. You could take Situations Podcast with you wherever you go. Mm-hmm. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, all that stuff. So definitely tune in. All right. So with that, I will see you all back here for the next episode in a couple of weeks. Woo!
Woo!